The light outside the ranch house faded into that deep, burnt gold that meant the desert was cooling down. The horizon shimmered like metal, and the air smelled of dust, sweat, and the faint sweetness of liniment. Inside, the little house was quiet, except for the slow creak of floorboards and the low hiss of a kettle cooling on the stove. Jack Marin sat bare to the waist, shoulders tight, staring at the wall as though the planks themselves might swallow his unease. His hat hung on the back of a chair. His boots were still on. He didn't like sitting still. Clara moved like someone used to silence. She had a bowl in her hands and a folded cloth over one arm. Her sleeves rolled to the elbows. She'd mixed her own balm, beeswax, lavender oil, and crushed willow bark, the sort of thing frontier women learned to make when doctors were a week's ride away. The smell of it was soft and clean, out of place among leather, tobacco, and dust. "Take a breath," she said gently. He grunted, not looking at her. "I'm breathing, ain't I?" "Not deep enough." She set the bowl down on the table beside him, dipped her fingers into it. "Show me where it hurts." "It don't hurt much anymore." She tilted her head, eyes calm and knowing. "You said that yesterday. And the day before." His mouth twitched. "You're stubborn. Someone has to be. Lift your arm." Reluctantly, he did. The movement pulled the skin over his ribs tight, and the scar, a pale, jagged seam just under his left side, caught the light like an old riverbed in dry season. The wound had sealed months ago, but the pain had never truly gone. Every time he saddled a horse or reached for his rifle, it tugged. A reminder of the ambush last winter, the night his brother fell. Clara touched the edge of the scar with the tip of her finger, so lightly he almost didn't feel it. Then her hand pressed the balm in slow, patient circles. Her fingers were small but firm, her skin cool. He froze. "Damn, that's cold." "You'll get used to it." Her tone wasn't teasing, but steady, like a teacher guiding a lesson she'd taught 100 times. He sat rigid, muscles locked, every nerve aware of her nearness. The house felt smaller somehow, the air thicker. "Rub it gently," she said. "The skin's still tender underneath." He swallowed, trying to sound casual. "You sure you know what you're doing?" She glanced up, meeting his eyes briefly. "I've tended worse than you." He almost smiled, but the motion died before it reached his mouth. Her touch changed. Slower now, tracing the uneven ridge of scar tissue, the spot where the bullet had torn him open. He winced when she found a hidden knot beneath the skin. "There," she murmured. "That's the part that never healed right." He wanted to pull back, but she held his gaze. "Don't fight it. Just breathe." He tried, but each inhale seemed to catch halfway. She pressed a little harder, and the ache spread outward like heat, dull and deep. "I said breathe, Jack." He obeyed. Her hand moved with rhythm, steady and sure. He could feel her breath near his shoulder, warm against his skin. The morning came soft and gray, the rain falling in a steady whisper against the ranch roof. The air smelled of wet sage and ash from last night's dying fire. Jack had been awake for hours, lying on his cot with his arm over his eyes, listening to the rain and the faint creak of the windmill turning outside. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her hands again, the quiet certainty of them, the warmth spreading through his ribs when she'd pressed down on that old scar. It wasn't just her touch that lingered. It was her words. "Don't be afraid of what hurts." He swung his legs off the bed and sat for a while, bare feet touching the cold floorboards. The pain in his side had eased overnight, but something inside him felt strange, like the ache had moved somewhere deeper, quieter. He dressed slowly, tugging on his boots and shrugging into a flannel shirt. Then he stepped outside into the soft rain. The world was hushed, the kind of stillness that only came after a storm. He found Clara in the barn, same as always, working before dawn. She had a lamp burning on a barrel beside her, its light flickering across her face as she ground herbs with a mortar and pestle. Her hair was damp, tied back in a rough braid, sleeves rolled to her elbows again. The scent of pine and comfrey filled the air, sharp, earthy, alive. "You're early," she said without looking up. He took off his hat and brushed water from the brim. "Couldn't sleep." "I guessed as much." She glanced at him, eyes soft but unreadable. "Sit down. We'll finish what we started." He hesitated. "You sure it's not too soon?" She smiled faintly. Pain doesn't wait for a convenient time. Neither should healing. He obeyed, settling onto the same wooden bench as before. She brought over a small clay pot, darker than the one she'd used last night. "Comfrey and pine tar," she said, stirring it with a wooden spoon. "This draws out what's buried deeper." Jack chuckled quietly. "Seems like you're set on digging right into me." "I'm not digging," she said softly. "Just showing your body where to let go." She scooped a bit of the balm onto her fingers and knelt beside him. Her hands were steady, but her voice had a gravity to it today. Heavier, like she knew they were going somewhere deeper than muscle and bone. "Breathe," she said. He did. The balm was cold at first, then warm as she worked it in. Her hands moved slower now, tracing over the old scar with care, pressing deeper into the knots beneath it. The ache rose again, dull and deep, like something uncoiling that had waited too long to be touched. She said quietly, "Your body still remembers the night you were shot. It's holding that moment over and over." His breath came out rough. "I don't need remembering. I need forgetting." "No," she said, her tone firm but kind. "You can't heal what you refuse to remember." He looked at her, jaw tight. "What if remembering just makes it worse?" "It won't," she said. "It just lets the pain know it's been seen." Her hands didn't stop moving. The silence between them thickened with something unspoken. Not tension, but truth pressing against the air. The balm glistened on his skin, and his breath grew heavier as she pressed harder into one stubborn knot just under the rib. "Tell me what happened that day," she said softly. He stiffened. "Why?" "Because that's where the hurt lives." He wanted to resist her, to keep his walls high and strong like he always had. But her voice was gentle, and the rain outside beat slow and steady, like it was keeping time for him. He swallowed hard. "We was driving cattle down the canyon. Me, my brother Sam, and 2 hands. We thought we was alone till the shots came. Sam was ahead, he took the first one. Dropped before I even saw where it came from." His voice broke a little. "I went to him, tried to stop the blood, but he told me to run. Said there was more coming. I didn't. I froze like a fool. By the time I pulled my gun, it was too late." Clara's hands slowed, resting flat over the scar. The heat from her palm seemed to sink straight into him. "You think that's your fault?" she said quietly. He looked away. "Ain't it?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "It was never yours to carry." He let out a harsh breath. "He died, Clara, and I'm here. Every time I wake, that's what I see." "Maybe that's what he wanted," she said. "For you to live. To keep something going when he couldn't." Her words hit like the recoil of a rifle, sudden and deep. He blinked hard, fighting the sting behind his eyes. She reached for a cloth and wiped the balm from his skin, her touch softer now. "Sometimes," she said, "pain isn't punishment. It's just a memory that forgot how to rest." He stared at her for a long moment. The lamplight caught the edges of her hair, turning it gold against the dim barn. Rain dripped through a crack in the roof, steady as a heartbeat. He said quietly, "You talk like you've carried some of that yourself." "I have," she admitted. "Lost my husband to fever. I thought if I kept working, kept helping others, I wouldn't have to feel it anymore. But it doesn't work that way. You can't chase grief off with chores." He nodded, slow and heavy. "Guess not." She set the cloth aside and looked at him, not as a patient now, but as a man. "You've done enough punishing yourself, Jack. It's time you let the dead rest, and let yourself live." He didn't know what to say. The words felt too big to answer. So he just breathed, long and deep, until his chest stopped trembling. When she finally stepped back, the ache in his side was different, not gone, but changed. like a storm that had passed and left the air clean. He buttoned his shirt slowly, aware of her eyes following his hands. "I reckon," he said with a faint, crooked smile, "you're more dangerous than any outlaw in these parts." She arched a brow. "How's that?" "You go straight for where a man's weakest and make him admit it." That made her laugh softly, the sound breaking the heaviness between them. "Then maybe I'm guilty." He stood, pulling his hat back on. "You staying long?" "As long as I'm needed," she said. He hesitated at the barn door, one hand on the frame. "Then I hope this place keeps needing you a while longer?" She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried both warmth and distance, like sunlight through thin clouds. "You'll be fine, Jack Marin. You just needed someone to remind you that living isn't the same as surviving." He nodded, tipping his hat before stepping out into the clearing rain. The land smelled clean, the air sharp with new life. The clouds were breaking apart, strips of silver sky showing through. For the first time in a long while, he could breathe without feeling the pull of guilt in his chest. He turned once before heading toward the house. Clara stood in the barn doorway, the lamplight behind her, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite name. Half healer, half something gentler. The wind swept through the grass, and the last drops of rain slid off the eaves. He walked slowly back to the ranch, one hand brushing his side. The pain was still there, but it no longer ruled him. It was just a scar now, and beneath it something that might finally heal.